everyone, and welcome to the JIRCAS International Symposium 2022. We warmly welcome you today, whether you are attending in person or online. My name is Ayuchi Tamura, and I am very honored to be the MC for today's event. Thank you. To begin with, I would like to invite to the stage Mr. Osamu KOYAMA, President of JIRCAS. He will be giving you the opening remarks on behalf of the organizer of the symposium. Mr. KOYAMA, please.
Distinguished participants, good afternoon. As the President of the Japan International Research Center for Agricultural Sciences, JIRCAS, it is my great honor to privilege to open the JIRCAS International Symposium 2022, organized under the auspices of Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries and Japan Fisheries Research and Education Agency, FRA. This year, we hold this symposium as a hybrid event. In other words, online as well as the venue here in Tokyo. Since the outbreak of the pandemic, this is the first official JIRCAS symposium in about 3 years that we are having the physical presence of the participants and some of the audiences. This year, we have chosen the theme, Artisanal Fisheries and Aquaculture in a Sustainable Food Systems. In building the sustainable food systems, the potential of fisheries and aquaculture is enormous. Fisheries and aquatic foods supply proteins and other essential micronutrients more essentially than other food groups in terms of, for example, per unit weight greenhouse gas emission. At the same time, fishery and aquatic foods support the livelihoods of over 800 million people, the majority of whom work in small-scale systems. The International Year of Artisanal Fisheries and Aquaculture 2022, determined by the United Nations, is expected to highlight their importance in driving the food system transformation as well as achieving sustainable development goals. Despite their contribution, however, the role of small-scale fisheries and artisanal aquaculture tend to be underrepresented in the global food system debates. One of the reasons may lie in the fact that artisanal fisheries and aquaculture are primarily bounded by local environment, thus facing locally specific technical challenges to which no single or uni-academic solution is applied. In order to unlock the full potential of fisheries and aquaculture sector for food and nutrition security without leaving anyone behind, all the stakeholders, including academic, development agencies, and practitioners, should be able to share their experience and lessons to accelerate the solution provided by science, technology, and innovation. Among the Japanese agriculture, forestry, and fisheries research communities, JIRCAS, my institute, has played a central role in international collaboration. One of the JIRCAS research projects promotes the development of and dissemination of sustainable aquaculture technology in the tropical area based on the ecosystem approach. Given that this JIRCAS International Symposium 2022 aims at providing a forum with national and international research and academic communities to discuss opportunities and challenges for resilient, efficient, and sustainable fisheries and aquaculture sector. On behalf of organizer, I would like to thank Mr. KOYA Takashi, Director General of Fishery Agencies, who will deliver the welcome remarks for the symposium participants. I would also like to express my gratitude to our distinguished keynote speakers. Professor YAGI Nobuyuki of the University of Tokyo and Dr. Shakuntala Haraksingh Thilsted of WorldFish, one of the CGIAR Center, who is the winner of 2021 World Food Prize, very prestigious prize. Let me also extend my appreciation to the session speakers with expertise and experience in developing innovations for the sustainable fisheries and aquaculture sector, as well as the chairpersons and moderators. I'd like to take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to all of our collaborators worldwide who may attend this symposium online. Now we are slowly resuming face-to-face collaborative research, which was somewhat disrupted during the COVID-19 pandemic. But this period has made us realize how we are interconnected despite movement restrictions, so that we need to act together to build a resilient food system now. We truly appreciate your continuous support and cooperation. Finally, I sincerely hope this symposium will be very much meaningful and fruitful for all the participants. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. KOYAMA. Next, Mr. Takashi KOYA, the Director General of the Fisheries Agency, MAFF, will give you his welcome remarks. Mr. KOYA, please.
どうも皆さんこんにちは。水産庁長官のKOYAです。ちょっとですね挨拶に際して、通訳さんにはちょっとご迷惑をおかけしますけれども、当初の予定にない発言を少しだけ、させてください。小山理事長が英語で、挨拶されました。で、私の場合ですね、英語の発音が非常に悪くて、特に L と R の区別がつかない典型的な日本人の英語の発音になるんで、申し訳ないですけれども、日本語で喋ってそれを通訳さんに喋ってもらった方が皆さんの方によくわかるかなということで、事前に準備した挨拶をですね、日本語でさせていただきます。じゃあこれで普通のトラックに戻りますんで、通訳さんよろしくお願いします。 JIRCAS 国際シンポジウム2022の開催にあたり、一言ご挨拶を申し上げます。世界の食料供給においては、人口の増加、そして気候変動、飢餓、貧困などの課題への対応が迫られています。このような状況の中、持続可能な食料生産システムを構築していく上で、自然の生産力を生かしつつ、動物性タンパクを供給できる漁業・養殖業の重要性は、ますます高まっていくものと考えております。漁業・養殖業は、国民に対して水産物を安定的に供給するとともに、漁村や寒冷地域の経済を担う役割もあり、持続的な産業であることが求められています。そのような状況の中、我が国では本年3月に閣議決定された水産基本計画に基づき、水産資源の適切な管理と水産業の成長産業化に向けた取り組みを行っています。また、農水省では2021年に緑の食料システム戦略を策定し、農林水産業の CO2 ゼロエミッション化の実現など、環境に配慮した持続可能な食料生産システムの構築を目指しています。本年のJIRCAS 国際シンポジウム持続可能な食料システムにおける零細漁業と養殖業の役割は、熱帯域の持続的養殖技術の開発及び普及に向けた国際共同プロジェクトなど、重要な取り組みを扱っていると承知しています。このシンポジウムでの活発な意見交換を通じて、持続可能な食料生産システムの重要性、持続性と生産性向上の両立について、皆様の理解が深まることを期待しております。どうも以上、挨拶でございます。よろしくお願いします。
Thank you very much, Mr. KOYA. Now, please give us a few minutes to set up the stage for the next presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much for waiting. Now, we would like to move on to today's keynote speeches. The first speech is by Dr. Nobuyuki YAGI, Professor of the Graduate School of Agricultural and Life Sciences, the University of Tokyo. Dr. YAGI, please.
Thank you very much for introduction. My name is Yagi. Let's get started very quickly because I do have only 20 minutes. The title today is The Role of Artisanal Fisheries and Aquaculture in Sustainable Food Systems. Maybe I would remove my mask. Okay. I will show you repeatedly today. There are triple bottom lines of the sustainable development. One is environment, the second is economics, the third is socio-cultural. Let me show you some photos that I have taken. This is a photo in Indonesia. You can see a very traditional fishing boat. Also, many people get on board. This is a landing place in Indonesia. You can see the people are carrying fish by their own manpower, not using any machinery. And so this is the Asian traditional system. This is the landing place, and women are sorting out fish. I see a blue hat or a blue some hat. It looks like that they are belonging to the same women's organization for the fish distribution. The similar situation can be found in African countries. This is a photo I took in Tanzania. You can see many people here, and a small-scale fishing boat. Also, this is a catch in Tanzania, small-scale artisanal fishing. You can see variety of the fish, including very small species and the middle-sized species. Also, this is the photo that I have taken in Cambodia. In Cambodia, there is a large lake called the Tonle Sap Lake, and traditional fishing is ongoing to support the livelihood of the people. You can see traditional fishing gears, also traditional fishing boat and the house and variety of the fish. The wide variety of the fish is also captured in Cambodia. In India, Kerala, you can see certain similarities. That is, the women's group are organizing the sales of the fish, and the men's group are catching fish like this. In Japan, certain similarity exists. This is the landing place in Kagoshima. Skipjack are transferred from small-scale fishing boat to the land station, and they are transported by manually, not using any machines, but humans' hand. One of the reasons is the catch skipjack tuna is used for sashimi, and they are keen about the degrade or any damages of the body, so therefore they are carefully handling the catch. Women's group also has a role. This is a photo I have taken in Akashi Ura, Hyogo Prefecture. So, as such, 95% of Japanese fisheries are coastal small-scale fisheries. About 30 years ago, Japan do have many industrial long-distance fishing boats that operate inside of the US 200-mile zone or other countries' areas. But after 1980s, because of the establishment of the new international rule, those large boats are kicked out from those countries, and those large industrial boats are scrapped. After that, most of the Japanese fisheries are small-scale fishing. But again, the labor-intensive operation is common to the small-scale fishing. This is the situation in Japan. People are manually sorting out by species for the catch. This is the factory of the fisheries processing factories. But many employment exist, but rather they do not use any machineries. These are the characteristics of the small-scale fishing. They have certain institutions. She is Professor Elinor Ostrom. She got the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2009. And her issue is the research on institutional theory for the sustainable management, how the local people sustain their activities sustainably. And she found there are 8 principles. For example, I would not repeat all of the 8, but for example, number 1, clearly defined boundaries. That means if we have certain areas, then people are responsible for the management, the resources inside of the certain areas. Let me show you certain example in Notsuke or Hokkaido. Notsuke is a small peninsula, and inside of the peninsula there are shallow waters. And inside of the shallow water areas, the shrimp fishing is ongoing. This is the fishing boat they are using. The shrimp vessels are, you can see it's not a mechanized fishing boat. You can see at the rear side of the boat, the engines exist. But the main power is wind. Why? Because they have set up their own regulations not to use machines during towing fishing net, because too much engine power of the boat will damage the bottom of the ocean. bottom of the bay. Inside of the bottom of the bay, you can see those eel grass. Japanese term, it's amamo, and they provide habitat for shrimp. Shrimps are their main catch. So what they wanted to do is conserve this eel grass, because if they get rid of those eel grass, that means the habitat of the shrimp will be disappeared. So they would like to continue those amamo, or keeping their amamo. Certain the management practices are ongoing also by collaborating with the local scientists. This is the photo of the study group, and the local scientists are explaining the situation, and the fishermen are listening to that. In addition, from 1983, a women's group of Notsuke Fisheries Cooperative Association started to plant trees. Why plant trees? Because they know planting tree upstream of the river would improve the water quality inside of the bay. For example, you can see certain river in the letter area 7, certain river is running inside to the Bay Area. It used to be running through the natural forest. But as the time passing by, there are agriculture area established. So they rather keen about the maintenance of the water quality by planting trees upstream of the river. Let's move on to the aquaculture situation. This is the aquaculture in Japan. I took this photo in Amami Island. It's a southern islands in Japan. Also, this is the Ehime Prefecture. You can see inside of the ocean, you see the craft floating on the ocean. Those are the aquaculture facilities for sea bream or red snapper-like species. At the same time, you can see some fruits, especially in orange. They are famous for the orange. But orange farmers are very keen about the conservation of the water quality there. So they are refraining from the excessive use of the chemical fertilizer or chemical pesticide to conserve the water quality. So in the local situation, fishers, small-scale aquaculture farmers, orange farmers, they know each other, so they collaborate inside of the community. So those are the beauty for small-scale fishing and artisanal aquaculture. But at the same time, common threats exist. Number one, the depopulation of the rural area and decreasing number of the younger people. Number two, increased competition of agricultural products with imported foods. Number three, climate change and so on. But many threats are coming outside of the community. So the local people is rather powerless to fight against those issues. So what would be the next step? Yeah, let me show you the Norwegian situation. It's a totally different situation. They utilize very industrial fishing boats, and fishing boats are directly connected to the fish factory. The fish processing factory is right-hand side, and you can see the pipe in between the fishing boat and the factory. And in this, using this pipe, the mackerel or other fish that has been caught and kept inside of the fishing boat, those fish are transferred to the factories. Inside of the factory, the fish are transferred like this. You can see the totally bond and head were taken by the fish. So those are the final products. The ladies here, she is not processing. She is just checking the quality of the machine processed fish. Certain difference exists between Asia, Africa, Pacific Island, Caribbean countries, and Norway. The number one, as you can see from the photo, Asian, African situation, there are many small-scale boats. But in Norway, large industrial boats, and in Asia, many middlemen and labor-intensive. The ladies, they have certain role. But in Norway, no landing market and less employments. This can be achieved because of the low diversity of the fish exist. And also the difference is Norway fishing is an exporting business, but in Asia, Africa, fish are caught for satisfy their domestic the market. Again, in Asia, socio-cultural aspects are kept intact because of the small-scale fisheries. But in Norway, in the middle line, economics is very nicely achieved by efficient operations. But there are some reasons why that happens. Because in Asia, for example, if you can see the color of the ocean, the red one represents the area where higher biological diversity exists. And blue area, less or little biological diversity exists. This is exactly the similar situation from the land. For example, in Siberia or northern Canada, same tree species can be found, but not much variety of the plant species. But in Indonesia, if you go in the mountain or forest area inside of the Indonesia, you can see many species. So the same situation is ongoing inside of the ocean. In Norwegian situation, smaller number of the fish, so they can conduct efficient fishing using a large-scale boat. But inside of the Asian situation, because of the biological diversity is high, the large-scale fishing boat is not much good meaning, efficient meaning like that has in Norway. Taking into account those differences, food and agriculture organizations, they established voluntary guidelines for securing sustainable small-scale fisheries. So they respect human rights and gender equity and equality, participatory approach for the decision-making, and so on. So those are the values they would like to conserve. At the same time, FAO also established another issues, JIRCAS. This is a globally important agriculture heritage system. In FAO terminology, agriculture includes fisheries. So therefore, important agriculture heritage system means also include important fisheries or aquaculture heritage system. So those are characterized by agrobiological diversity or traditional knowledge and cultures, so on. So those are discussed in FAO, and but that is a little bit different from the value for WTO. WTO's value is to promote free trade, efficient fishing, efficient agriculture, everything needs to be efficient. But in terms of the diversified highly biological diversity areas like Africa, Asia, it's a little bit difficult to pursue this kind of very efficient operations. But it's people's choice. But one interest from my own interest is that from the beginning, human diet has a certain diversity, and they have certain inclusion. This is a sushi in Tokyo, but I took this photo in Singapore. You can see only salmon fish sushi in Singapore. But those are the outcome of the large-scale aquaculture in Chile or in Norway. But what the WTO's way to go to maximize the economic efficiency, profit, everything can be ended up like this. But if we conserve the variety of small-scale fishing, we can still keep this kind of the variety of the diet. So, this is the last one. The substantial role exists for artisanal fisheries and aquaculture in sustainable food system. And also the Michael Sandel, he is a philosophy professor. He mentions the more we think of ourselves as self-made and self-sufficient, the harder it is to learn gratitude and humility. Without these sentiments, it's hard to care for the common good, like global environment. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yagi. Next keynote speech is by Dr. Shakuntala Haraksingh Thilsted, Global Lead for Nutrition and Public Health of WorldFish. Dr. Thilsted, please.
Good afternoon to all. I thank the organizers of the JIRCAS International Symposium 2022 for inviting me to give this keynote address entitled Transforming Food Systems, Aquatic Foods for Nourishing People and Planet. My address is based on the following outline. First, I will talk about the global food and nutrition security, where we are today and where we want to go. Then I will introduce the term aquatic foods and what I mean by aquatic foods when I term it superfoods. Then I will talk about aquatic food systems in relation to sustainable development and the Sustainable Development Goals. Move on to why I use the term aquatic foods for nourishing nations, and give 5 examples of approaches, nutrition-sensitive approaches, that WorldFish, where I work, and our partners are using across the globe on moving nutrition-sensitive aquatic food systems. And I will conclude with 3 high-level actions and a tagline, which I would ask you to remember and share widely. Let's look at the global food and nutrition security. And we do know that the situation is worrying and that it has been getting even more worrisome in the later years. Africa, with less than half the population of Asia, accounts for over a quarter of all malnourished people. And we do know that there are many people, the data gives 3.1 billion people who cannot afford a healthy diet. And this has been increasing with COVID-19 and has increased. The malnutrition situation in children continues to be very worrisome. More than 1 in 5 children are stunted. And overweight is growing. This is extremely worrisome because overweight is growing rapidly, not only in adults, women and men, but also in children. Let's look at the trends in global hunger and malnutrition. And the graphs, the two graphs here of hunger and malnutrition, go from 2005 to 2021. And if you look at the first, up to 2017, we've been performing pretty well at the global level, with the trends decreasing, stagnating for some time, but from 2017, we've seen increasing rates of global hunger and malnutrition. And we do know that in the very last years, the last 3 years, that the changes we have had with climate change, with conflicts, and with COVID-19 have made these two graphs increase rapidly. But what is worrisome and what we must think about is how do we set our minds and our actions and all what we can do in order to stay on the course for the Sustainable Development Goals up to 2030. And we do know already now that the projections we have today, based on these trends that we are seeing, is that 670 million people will continue to face hunger in 2030. And our goal then, as we have set out in the Sustainable Development Goals, was zero hunger and zero malnutrition by 2030. I'm positive that we can turn things around, and I'm positive that within the global agenda of where we are today and the way we are moving forward with the narrative we have and the changes that we are having, that we can do better than we are doing today. We can shape the global narrative, and in the case of that I am talking about, we can use aquatic foods to shape the global narrative to put us on a better course towards the Sustainable Development Goals of 2030. In 2021, we held the United Nations Food Systems Summit, and that was all about terming the summit a people's summit and about transforming food systems for the better, using the tagline, leaving no one behind, making sure that the poor and vulnerable were included. This United Nations Food Systems Summit was based on, to some extent, the Decade of Action on Nutrition, which was from 2016 to 2025. And this was followed by the United Nations Decade of Science on Sustainable Development, Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. It's termed Ocean Science, but as it started rolling out in 2021, it was considered that oceans were not, it was not just marine waters that we should be considering, but all waters, both marine waters and inland water bodies. That was followed by Climate Change Conference and also with the Ocean Conference. And we had the COP26 in Glasgow, where I would say for the first time, there was this integration of climate change and food and nutrition security. And then at COP27, this continued with the trend being with greater linkages between transformation of food systems and climate change. And we will see this trend continuing in COP28, which will be held in the United Emirates. So I do think with this global narrative we do have hopes and we do have great plans for how we can reach to sustainable development. Now, I'm using aquatic foods as a very strong entry point for this change in sustainable development. But firstly, let me introduce aquatic foods. And these are many thousands. Some people give the value of over 10,000 aquatic animals, plants, and organisms that are found in marine waters and inland waters that are used for food. What is important to note is that aquatic foods are diverse. There are many different species of animals, plants, and microorganisms that are used for food. So the contribution to food and nutrition is great and can be greater yet if we would look at all the possibilities of using aquatic foods for foods. We also know, as we heard also from Dr. YAGI, that over 3.3 billion people consume aquatic foods globally. So the reach of aquatic foods and the importance of aquatic foods in diets is large. And over 800 million people depend to some extent on aquatic food systems for their livelihood and income. So there are multiple advantages of ensuring that aquatic foods are important for sustainable development. I've started, together with my colleagues, to use the term aquatic foods as superfoods. And why do I do this? This is concentrating on the importance of aquatic foods for nourishing people. In doing so, we must recognize the diversity of aquatic foods as superfoods. And looking at the food and nutrition benefits, we do know that many aquatic foods have multiple highly bioavailable micronutrients, minerals, and vitamins. And this is quite unique if you would compare them to plant-source foods. And having these unique properties of being rich in micronutrients, vitamin and minerals, as well as essential fatty acids, make them superfoods for nourishing people and keeping people healthy. As I mentioned before, we also have the socioeconomic benefits in terms of livelihood and income. And we do know that aquatic food systems, there are many women employed, engaged, and many youth who are engaged. And therefore, it's important for the livelihoods and incomes of these groups as well. And we can use aquatic food systems for improving capacity building of many different actors in food systems across the globe. We also must consider the environmental benefits of aquatic foods in terms of ecology rehabilitation and low environmental cost. I'll come back to that with 2 graphs later. But let me first show some values for the diversity and the high levels of micronutrients, minerals and vitamins, and essential fatty acids that are found in diverse aquatic foods. And these graphs that you see here, they include over 4,000 different aquatic foods with data that have been collected from the literature. I'd like you to pay attention to the first line on the graph, small pelagic fish. And it's just not pelagic fish from marine sources, but also small fish species from inland water bodies. And if we look at this grouping, we can, in terms of contribution to recommended dietary intakes, a portion of this food. We've used a portion of 25 grams for children and a portion of 50 grams for women. And we do see that in terms of this portion and in relation to recommended dietary intake, that there are these small fish species are extremely important in terms of providing essential fatty acids and multiple vitamins, for example, vitamin B12, which is all important for cognition and for brain development in children in the first 1,000 days, and for example, calcium, but also in terms of its contribution to iron and zinc. Dr. Yagi talked about this, about the sustainable development as we move forward, and the 3 areas that are being considered: social, economical, and the environment. And if we look at all 3 areas, we do know that aquatic food systems have the potential to contribute quite significantly to all these 3 pillars. Putting this in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, aquatic food systems contribute to many of these. Of course, to SDG 14, life below water, but also to SDG 2, zero hunger and malnutrition, SDG 1, no poverty, and SDG 3 in terms of good health and well-being. And as I mentioned before, many women are engaged in aquatic food systems, so aquatic food systems contribute also to SDG 5 in terms of gender equality. Let me go back to the environmental footprint of aquatic foods. And these 2 slides that I have, these 2 graphs that I have here, compare the conversion efficiency, that is, how much feed is needed for animal food from different sources. And here I compare, in the first graph, I compare aquaculture and fisheries with cattle, pig, and chicken. And as you can see, that aquatic foods from aquaculture and fisheries, they use less feed for the conversion into food. Likewise, for greenhouse gas emissions, fisheries and aquaculture give less greenhouse gas emissions than the other animal source foods production systems. So therefore, I feel quite safe and confident in using the term that aquatic foods are very important for nourishing people and nourishing nations. And I've worked a lot with partners and with my colleagues to change the narrative from feeding a growing population to nourishing people and planet. And in doing so, move the focus from the quantity of few staple foods to the quality, both the nutritional quality and the food safety of diverse multiple aquatic foods. In doing so, we can transform food systems, and we must begin with the consumers and move our way backwards to the supply chains and the production systems. Not always start with the production systems and the inputs to production, and before you know it, many have fallen asleep and not reached to the consumers. And doing so, this move from using aquatic foods to nourish people and nourish nations is quite new. Just 2 years ago, the United Nations Nutrition wrote a paper together with partners on aquatic foods. And Blue Foods Assessment, which was a group of 200 researchers, got together and looked at aquatic foods and how they contribute to development. Let me give a brief outline of the United Nations nutrition paper. And this addresses the need for a global narrative on nutrition where we focus on aquatic foods. And it presents the evidence on which we can build the policies and we can build our actions moving forward. And importantly, it outlines the recommendations of the actions that how we can use aquatic foods for improving food and nutrition security. So I will encourage you to look at the paper on the internet and read some of the recommendations that we have outlined. In putting people at the center and moving to nourishing people with aquatic foods, leaving no one behind, let me give 5 brief examples of how we approach this, is how we do this within WorldFish in different parts of the world, in Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. And the first one is to diversify consumption of aquatic foods. How do we do this? We focus especially on women and young children, the first 1,000 days, and we've been working with developing nutrient-rich food-based products. For example, dried small fish, fish powder, small fish powder, a fish chutney for pregnant and lactating women, and in Cambodia, a fish wafer, which is the photo that you see below, in Cambodia for malnourished children. And these fish products are extremely important because they improve the convenience, the shelf life, the acceptability, and the affordability of foods. We have different pathways on how we can increase consumption of aquatic foods. For example, to promote the consumption in different countries. For example, in Zambia and in Timor-Leste, we've worked with communities to develop recipes and recipe books that are widely distributed to many, also to schools, to increase the consumption of aquatic foods. Next, to improve the diversity in production and supply chains of aquatic foods, not just depend on monoculture systems. So, for example, using polyculture of small and large fish in homestead ponds, in wetlands, water bodies, and in integrated systems of rice fields and ponds. And with respect to supply chains, looking at methods to use solar drying tents, both at home and in communities. And in the Solomon Islands, we are also using solar-powered freezers for marine fish. Importantly, we should be including aquatic foods in policies, regional, national, and state policies. And we've been very successful in doing this in Bangladesh, with aquatic foods being selected as one of the first nutrition-sensitive food systems approaches in the policy plan, and also in Odisha in the policy with regards to nutrition. Aquatic foods, fish and fish powder and dried fish have been included for nourishing women and children. Moving forward with this, we should build up partnerships to strengthen policy by looking at South-South collaboration. There are many of the solutions that we have, for example, in Asia, that would be very beneficial in African countries. And in doing so, work together with the international organizations such as FAO and CGIAR. Engaging women is important. As I've mentioned before, 1 out of 2 in the aquatic food systems are women. And in so doing, therefore, we should strengthen their roles in aquatic food systems and understand the roles they play, ensure that their contributions are valued, that they are not unpaid, and that they are not overlooked. And there are many ways we can do this, through policy interventions, investments in research, using data technologies where we know women are behind men in using data technologies, and across the board through the aquatic food systems, build up capacity. The 5th approach that I want to talk about is youth engagement. There's no way we can move further with nutrition and agriculture, with food systems, if we do not engage youth. And youth also included young women. In doing so, we must look at the pillars for engagement and think about the rights, equity, agency, and recognition. And there are many ways we can use this. For example, using new data technologies and combining this with traditional traditional knowledge. I would ask you to look at the Committee on World Food Security report that was published in 2021 on promoting youth engagement and employment in agriculture and food systems. Let me end with 3 key messages. Firstly, we must recognize the crucial role of aquatic foods in transformation towards sustainable, nutritious, and equitable food systems. Thereafter, amplify investments in research, innovations, and scale of aquatic foods at all levels, from communities and all the way up to the global levels. And we must empower all champions, youth, communities, through capacity building, knowledge sharing, and bridging the digital divide to advance the transformation of aquatic food systems. I'll leave you with a tagline, which I hope you'll remember and which you will share widely. Holistic food, land, and water systems transformation must build on the principles of sustainability and diversity to nourish all people on our planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thilsted. Now, please give us a moment to prepare for the next program. Thank you.